And you are safe and sound. You're safe and sound with KOP HD1 HD3 Hornsby. This is the Community Pilot Show. I am Undercover Greg. Today we are continuing a series on first responders. And this is in parallel with the Reflections of Community Outreach Show on Mondays, which has been dealing with Austin City services that we feel are out there, but you might not know about it. And today, my host is going to be Michael A. Brown, and he's going to introduce you to Austin Travis EMS, some of the things they do to us day to day, and some of the things they did for many days with Harvey. So, Michael, it's up to you.
Thank you very much, Greg, and a special appreciation to four very fine gentlemen across the table from me right here who drive those vehicles that you see with the flashing red and blue lights, and they do it very, very well indeed. Please welcome Rescue Medic Sean Norton. Hi, Sean.
Hey,
Sean's right over there. I'll turn the microphone around so our listeners can see you. Captain Darren Noak, you with us, sir? There you go. Commander Keith Noble is with us.
Hello, sir.
Along with Commander Mike Benavides.
Good afternoon.
Welcome. We're delighted to have you with KOOP. As Greg was suggesting, everybody has seen you at one time or another, but they may not know the extent of the things that you do, that you provide here in Austin, and that you were so helpful with in providing for our friends and relatives and neighbors over in Houston during Hurricane Harvey. And we'll focus on that, if I may, for starters. When Hurricane Harvey was approaching the Austin area, what were your agencies and your colleagues most worried about from a weather perspective and a potential EMS perspective? Commander Benavides, I'll defer that one to you, please, sir.
Well, number one, thank you for having us today. When we were anticipating that event from Harvey, obviously there was some concern that some of those outer bands would reach out to us locally. What that creates is we stand up our resources, which is our water rescue assets, our communications assets, additional personnel if need be that we may need to recall in order to come back for work. And so we have many of those assets are pre-positioned and staged, many of our water rescue teams. And so that is what we did in anticipation of a potential strike from Harvey here locally. Now,
Rescue Medic Sean Norton, it says here on your documentation that you are a swiftwater boat rescuer. Did you have any particular concerns for Austin and Travis County as Harvey was approaching the area?
Oh, of course. We live right in the middle of Flash Flood Alley. This is...
Or Lamar River, as it's sometimes known.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even a small amount of rain falling in the hill country wants to go downhill. And when we get enough of it, all of that water funnels into the Austin area, and it basically collides with the I-35 corridor. Once we see that, it's water rushing up into the houses, cars getting stuck in low-lying areas. People that go out to sightsee in those areas, they'll walk into it, and sometimes there's more current than they anticipate, and they find themselves in a lot of trouble.
Well, I sure remember vividly a couple of storms ago, a couple of years ago, that fellow clinging to the post over by House Park. Maybe you remember that one. I don't know if that was your particular squad that rescued the guy, but they were out there with the boats getting him. A question, please, for Commander Noble. As the storm approached, Harvey approached here, what special actions did you take and preparations did you make on a perhaps unit-by-unit level, vehicle-by-vehicle level?
So we're... like Mike was saying, we're trying to prepare and deploy all our resources, and we're also trying to get ready for a state response. So we have a lot of different agreements with the state where we respond out there. So we have a disaster medical team. So we have a team of medics that have their bags packed, ready to go, of about 35 medics in our department, and they're deployable anywhere in the state. So we're ramping up that as we see reports coming in about the hurricane and where it's going, and we're trying to figure out where we're going to send people and what the state needs as far as resources.
Captain Darren Noak, When the storm was approaching, did you and your crews remain at your usual stations, or did you pre-position elsewhere in Austin and Travis County to potentially be near the known or suspected trouble spots?
Well, those of us that were involved in the ambus deployment, eventually, we were all remaining on our own normal day-to-day post, waiting for instructions, obviously, from the state or from our higher-up command level to letting us know that we have been activated. So after we got the activation, one of the crews headed on down to the San Antonio area for staging, and then, of course, they wait around there in that staging area until they get an actual assignment and go out and get a task to perform.
Now, shortly before we went on the air, we were talking about how your agency's Austin Travis County EMS works in close collaboration with other agencies. Sean Norton, tell us about that, please. How does that work?
We train with all of the local resources, with the local fire departments, with local volunteer search and rescue units, as well as other departments in the state. We'll go out and get together in New Braunfels and meet up on the river with departments from Dallas, from Houston, from South Texas, some even as far away as El Paso. And we'll get together, and that way everybody has the same level of training pretty much across the board, and they all get experience on the same water, so we understand what everybody's capabilities are.
Now, in both natural and man-made circumstances elsewhere, communications or the difficulties with communications have arisen as big issues. How does Travis County EMS coordinate your communications with the other agencies that you gentlemen have referenced? I'll give that one to who wants that one. Okay.
Communication is always a big factor in any type of disaster response. So we have redundant systems here locally. We have our handheld radios. We use cell service and other multiple different ways to get our message across, our communications. On a statewide level, down there for the hurricane, we luckily had cell service for most of it, but we also have availability for satellite phones and satellite radios and things like that. On our ambulance bus, we have a satellite phone that we can use when cell service goes out.
How about the inter-service communication, things such as frequency selection or frequency crosstalk, things of that nature, near and dear to us?
Yeah,
that
is a big, long class that it takes hours for people to do. And luckily, we have a whole section of communication medics that are specially trained in that, and they can do all the patching and communications and stuff like that.
Now, we kind of got lucky, frankly, here in the Austin area. It rained a lot, and it certainly was sustained winds. Indeed, the tree in front of my house now lists about 5 degrees toward the southwest, but I think it'll recover eventually. But when it became apparent to you and your agencies that Austin was not going to bear the brunt of the big storm, how did the transition go to start moving your equipment and your personnel off to help out elsewhere, in particular Houston?
So again, we were prepared to respond here locally to any type of water rescues or inundation of water. As soon as we knew that the storm really wasn't going to hit Austin too much, we started to shift a lot of our resources down to Houston and down to San Antonio for staging per the request of the state. But we did have, we were holding resources back for a little bit just to make sure they wouldn't be needed locally. Now,
besides the water rescues, occasionally there are airlift rescues. Are you gentlemen involved in that as well? Go ahead, please.
We are. Rescue medic Norton here, obviously, they were in some situations where they actually had to go out in the boat, locate people in need, and then return them back to a suitable area where they could be helicopter evacuated down in the Beaumont and Houston area. So that's definitely something that we work with those agencies as well quite a bit.
I want to ask you about Houston in particular because most of us have seen the video during the storm and subsequently. When you and your groups arrived at Houston, were things there pretty much as you expected? Were they worse or were they better?
Well, I had an interesting perspective on that. I grew up in Houston, and I didn't move here to Austin until about 2002.
You're listening to Sean Norton right now.
And once we got down there were a lot of the known areas that flood a lot. Houston's built on the sides of a swamp.
Indeed.
It's going to receive a lot of rain. Most of the time it can handle that. When we got down there, every single highway in and out of the area was completely inundated. It often took us 4 to 5 hours to move maybe 10 miles.
Wow.
Because we couldn't use the normal
I-10
highway
was
system.
flooded, what, correct?
I-10 was
That's
flooded.
right, yeah.
Beltway 8 was flooded. 610, every major thoroughfare in the area had sections that were underwater. And so we'd have to try to navigate that. We'd get off in side streets, cut through neighborhoods, and try to find a way around that blockage to get back up onto the highway system to make the distance that we needed to cover then.
The people that you had to rescue or that you assisted in rescuing in Houston, were most of them in reasonably good shape, simply flooded out, or were some of them injured and not in such good shape?
The vast majority of them were health-wise in pretty decent shape. They were stuck, and they were stuck unprepared, most without food and water, electricity, plumbing, things that we take for granted every day.
Indeed.
And so those were the ones where the volunteers who came in with their boats. These are people with high-lifted trucks and bass boats that realized that they were in a good condition.
Oh, the civilian flotilla, as it were.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
They came in and moved mountains. They could get in and take care of most of the evacuations in the neighborhoods if people just needed a ride out of their neighborhood. So we became more of a specialized resource. We could get our boats through water that was too dangerous to take your average bass boat through. We have the swift water training, but we also bring the medical training. So they would bring in, they would give us cases in a lot of times it would be people that were confined to a bed for a health reason. One case in particular, the water was up to the level of the mattress of this hospital bed. And this person needed specialized care to get them out. So in our case, we brought a swift water rescue boat with 2 paramedics on it, and we know how to move people. We know how to move people that are in those types of health situations. So we were able to get this person evacuated out to a point where we could get an ambulance in to continue the transport to a specialty medical shelter where they could continue being in a safe spot.
Now, here in Austin, of course, you're coordinating with other local and state agencies. Everybody and his uncle was down in Houston trying to help out. Commander Benavides, how did you keep everything straight? How did the different agencies know where to go and know where to conduct the rescues?
Well, we received that information from the state. You know, the State Emergency Operations Center has they coordinate those efforts and those assets. They make the initial requests, and then once those requests are made, once those assets are positioned or pre-positioned, then they start creating a plan of attack and a game plan on how. Now, locally, we had our assets that were deployed, and we also maintained that a ready state. We're always in a ready state so that in case something else happens here, we're prepared.
Was there anything that you encountered in Houston that was very surprising to you, perhaps different from what you had historically encountered in storms here in the Austin area?
So I was in the Emergency Operations Center in Houston, and one of the biggest things that we had to figure out was, you were talking about inundation of water, was a lot of hospitals, they were open, the emergency rooms were open, but you couldn't get to them. So we had to do a lot of navigating of ambulances to the local hospitals and get patients to the emergency rooms when the hospital is surrounded by water. How do you go about doing that?
And the hospitals perhaps were operating by that time on generator power.
Yeah,
is that correct?
most of them were. And luckily, they have enough generator power to run their hospital. But then you start talking about hospital evacuations when they start running out of power.
That got really scary.
Yes.
We saw some of that on the videos. Our guests today are all from Austin Travis County EMS. They are Rescue Medic 2 Sean Norton, Captain Darren Noak, Commander Keith Noble, and Commander Mike Benavides. We're going to take a break for some terrific music. I'll tell you what it is in just a moment. Couple of underwriter announcements, but don't go away. We'll be right back with all these fellas in their sharp blue uniforms. Chatting a bit with, with Captain Darren Noak, and he was mentioning that not only did they go to Houston, but before Houston, some of their colleagues also went to places like Rockport and Fulton and all those cities down along the coast that got whacked by the storm. Tell us about that, including, if you will, Captain, some of your personal experiences, what you saw, what happened with your group.
Sure. Yeah, that's something that seems to be missed at times is the vast, widespread impact that storm had. And, with the AMBUS, and for those of you that don't know what the AMBUS is, because we're just throwing out that term right now, the AMBUS is a converted school bus that has the capability to transport 20 patients at a time. Immobile patients. We have beds set up, everything. We have a crew of crew chief and a driver and 4 medics that can tend to all those people and move them over vast distances. And that's something that kind of happened ahead of the storm over in the Rockport-Fulton area.
Because they knew it was coming.
Right, they knew it was coming. And if you think about it, and we mentioned maybe something behind the scenes that people don't know, is that planning that goes ahead of the storm. When you're expecting a storm with that magnitude, you've got hospitals, you've got nursing homes, you've got all these facilities that might need evacuation prior to that event occurring, but prior to them losing power. So our AMBUS crew, our first deployment...
Is AMBUS short for ambulance bus?
Ambulance bus, exactly.
Got it. Okay.
Exactly. So they were able to go down there. They were able to help set up, along with the EMTF, which is Emergency Medical Task Force, go down there and set up a mobile medical hospital, mobile medical unit, and then go over into Corpus Christi, go to those areas and start evacuating hospitals, 20 patients at a time ahead of it. As far as me personally, I guess one of the things that I experienced, one of the assignments that we had was to go to San Antonio from Beaumont, nonetheless, leave from Beaumont, go to San Antonio, pick up a bunch of residents from a nursing home that had been evacuated in Galveston. Mm-hmm. And so we made that trip all the way from Beaumont to San Antonio, loaded up, all the way from San Antonio to Galveston. And, it's just good knowing that you can be a piece of that rebuilding, because obviously after the mitigation of the response and everything, there's always that rebuilding. And it was good to see and know that you're getting those people back to their homes.
And certainly avoiding some of the tragedies like the one that happened in Florida at that nursing home there, where the power went out and I think several people passed away. Commander Benavides, from your perspective, your command perspective per se, were there experiences that were particularly notable for you, either positive or negative, in this whole episode with Hurricane Harvey?
Well, I didn't respond down to the coast like my colleagues here did, but the information that we were receiving back here is that those people were suffering. All the people along the coastline. However, that the state and the federal government, assisted by the federal government, really provided a lot of great support and continues to provide that support to those affected areas. And so I think that there are always lessons learned. Mm-hmm. And there will certainly be no short of lessons learned in these events that just occurred. However, some of the previous lessons learned, I think, still helped attribute for this to be, for lack of a better term, successful in its response and its support.
When, I'll address this one, please, to Commander Noble, when some of the coastal cities flooded and were actually cut off from the mainland. I'm thinking now of Port Aransas, and I don't know if Rockport and Fulton were similarly isolated. How does EMS deal with that?
So it's very difficult, obviously. You have to get the resources in there first, and then you're cut off. So this happened in Beaumont, too, also, because we were in Beaumont, and we had the mobile medical unit there, and basically we had to fly everybody out. Anybody that came out of the Beaumont area, any of those areas, were flown by helicopter or a fixed-wing aircraft back to Houston or back to Austin or back to Dallas to get treatment. One of the biggest patient populations that we had to handle was dialysis patients.
Oh, my.
So these patients didn't have dialysis for 3, 5, 7 days sometimes. And then they're calling 911, and then we have to get them out of the area somehow when all the roads are flooded.
Did any of your equipment go away in the floods, or everything was okay?
Everything was pretty much okay. We didn't really lose anything.
A question for all of you, if you will, please. What was the hairiest moment that you experienced while helping out during Hurricane Harvey?
Probably the most dangerous thing that we witnessed this goes back to the civilians with their boats making rescues. We were flagged down for somebody who had received a text message that a car had gone off of a bridge off of I-10 and was missing. These people were trying to mobilize a local response to this, and one of the volunteer boats with 3 people on board, they made a turn underneath one of the bridges. What they couldn't see was that there was no exit on the other side. The water level was up to the bottom of the bridge, and they got caught in the current.
Holy cow.
And anytime that you're in the current, that is the most dangerous place for a boat to be. And they weren't expecting it. And they were starting to get drug underneath the bridge. Thankfully, they managed to all get out alive. Their boat took some pretty heavy damage, but
I'm not surprised, but hooray for them and for the good fortune of getting out okay. Captain, how about you? Got any particularly hairy moments that jump out at you?
Well, the AMBUS doesn't provide as hairy moments as a swiftwater boat would, but just seeing, like you said, the overall devastation and how that affected the people, just disrupting their lives and everything. So, we went to a mobile medical unit in Silsbee that, had just been inundated with people. And once again, like Commander Noble said, that was a situation where those people had to be evacuated by air, too, to just receive the ongoing medical attention that they need. So just the effects of the lives of the people that were affected.
I have to ask this. Was there anything funny that happened in all of this? Anything that even caused perhaps some of your evacuees to chuckle?
Not really funny, but one of the more particular things was we were in a high school gymnasium trying to sleep one time. We were taking off. We were trying to find beds, and we were making makeshift beds out of mats and things like that. And it's kind of a funny picture. You got to see the picture, but
wrestling mats and things like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
So we were sleeping on wrestling mats and trying to sleep in a gym with all the lights on, and with the school bells going off.
Oh my goodness!
So we couldn't turn off the class bells to change classes. So every 45 minutes, one of the bells was going off.
They often say that deployments are vast periods of boredom interrupted by very exciting stuff. So to pass some of the boredom time, my crew ended up making a cornhole game so we could play in the parking lot where we were in staging out of cardboard and little heat packs and cold packs and stuff.
And if this was going on at the high school, no doubt that was between third and fourth period, right between math and social studies. I want to conclude with an important question. The most important lessons learned in Harvey that likely will be applicable here in the future in the Austin area.
I think being prepared, we were well prepared for this, for the local response and for the state response. We haven't had a hurricane for a really long time, so I think being even more prepared for something like this in the future is something we're all going to work on here at the local level and the state level.
Yeah, the preparation's a hot topic. You may have seen that Tropical Storm Ophelia whacked the west coast of Ireland, the worst storm that they've had there in 50 years. And I was in Galway, Ireland last year, and I can only imagine what it's like with roofs flying off the buildings there. Greg?
Well, it's time to give up the mic and turn the program over to Under the Eternal Night. I can't imagine. Again, we always struggle with the transition from the light and the brightness of the activities of our guests here, and then transfer into Under the Eternal Night. But Del Sur is with us and will be with us soon. I wanted to thank you, Michael, for hosting this show, and thank you, gentlemen. I say this almost every week that I'm on the air. Thank you for what you do every day. Thank you for taking the time out to be with us and share.
We need to ask them, how do we get in touch with their agencies?
Yeah, who wants to give up their cell phone number?
No cell phone number here. However, 972-7200 is our main headquarters number. And so if anybody needs us for anything non-emergent, then, whether it be, something having to do with the billing or anything else having to do with EMS and the services that we provide, which are a vast number of services, then they can, call us at that number and ask. But, the old standby is 911 if it's an emergency, and we're coming.
And you can get deferred or referred to from 311 as well.
Correct. We ask that if it's an emergency, just dial 911.
Okay. Well, thanks again, gentlemen. And I know you don't like to be considered heroes, but we're going to go out with a song from Smash Mouth, Everyday Superheroes. Thanks again, and thanks for what you did at Harvey.
Thank you, sir.